Good morning to all members of the media. Good morning to all our listeners in St. Lucia, and especially those of you listening from the diaspora. Welcome to this press conference hosted by the Opposition United Workers' Party. This morning I have with me, to my left, the Deputy Political Leader of the United Workers' Party, Mr. Guy Joseph, and to my right, the other Deputy Political Leader, Senator Dominic Fede. I am Leonard Montoute, and I will be starting off the proceedings with a statement on the crime situation in St. Lucia. Subsequently, I will have Mr. Fede, who will tackle a number of topics, including the CIP and the infrastructural development of St. Lucia, and we'll have Guy Joseph speak on the agriculture industry and some other issues that are pertinent and of interest to St. Lucians. First, let me start by quoting a statement that I heard recently. Crime has become normalized in St. Lucia. The words of a resident of Vieux-Fort who made that statement while describing and discussing the crime situation as obtained especially in his hometown of Vieux-Fort and the number of homicides that we are experiencing over the last 2 years in particular, and what we have seen in the first quarter of this year. I heard the statement, I was jolted by the statement, but it really was driven home when I saw footages of the last homicide, well, last that I know of, and we have to be very careful now as we speak. We don't know how the figures have been affected, but it's my information that we are up to 30 homicides now in this country, a startling figure in less than 4 months. And we are seeing footages of the last homicide, number 30, and of course that's official figures. And I was amazed to see how calm, how nonchalant, how undisturbed residents of the community who were sitting across the road from the dead body were, including children. But what do you expect when you have a government that is totally indifferent about the crime escalation that we are experiencing in this country? When last have you heard any strong, definitive statement from a government official on this crisis that St. Lucia is facing? It is a crisis. Things are out of hand. The criminals have taken control. But it doesn't seem to be alarming to the government. It doesn't seem to affect them. It doesn't seem to stimulate them to take any action, any decisive action, to prevent and avert the occurrence of crime that has become all too often. Every morning, the question is, any other died? Anybody else was killed? If the answer is yes, we will just move on as if it is normal, as if it is, I mean, we have to ask ourselves, what kind of country are we leading right now? What kind of situation are we degenerating into? Is it going to have to become a country that is chaotic, that is a failed state before our government, the people who are responsible for the conduct of the affairs of this country, the people who are responsible for our safety and security, take heed and acknowledge what is happening? It cannot be business as usual when we have a situation such as this. And that brings to mind the announcement by the government that St. Lucia is soon to host an international event, that is Cricket World Cup. Of course, we welcome any such event with the economic benefits that it brings, with the attention that it brings to our country, and the visitors who will come to St. Lucia. And we are hoping that out of events such as this, not only will we have the economic benefit, but we will be profiled positively in the to the international world. My fear is, given the current situation as it exists today, do we want to put the international spotlight on St. Lucia and for us to have a major disaster like what transpired Independence last year, like what transpired Easter last year, like what transpired a few weekends ago? That can be so deleterious to the efforts that we have been making in terms of our advertisement, our marketing for tourism. What if a visitor is caught in the crossfire of what is taking place in St. Lucia today? I ask those questions because those are pertinent, relevant questions. It is not far-fetched. I ask those questions because today it appears that our police are so stretched that they cannot deal with curbing the crime situation that exists now. What happens when we will have to divert police resources to this international event? What happens in terms of manning the streets and communities of St. Lucia? Are we ready for the possible consequences of hosting an international event at this time? Our government must give us the comfort by telling us what measures are going to be put in place, what measures are going to be taken, because I'm saying now, we must take into consideration the potential disaster that can come out of the situation if we are not fully prepared and equipped to host. And I'm talking about the aspect of security. St. Lucians must take this seriously because the criminals, under normal circumstances, are having their way. They will be mindful that our police attention is diverted during the event, and God knows what will happen then. Or is it, as the gentleman from Vieux-Fort, the resident of Vieux-Fort, stated, that crime has become so normalized that it does not matter? When a government with so many ministers with portfolios related to crime prevention and fighting cannot come out and make a statement and tell us what their plans are, and we heard the government, the Prime Minister again, call for assistance, indicating, of course, his inability to deal with the situation and his lack of a plan to deal with the situation. But when provided with recommendation, he comes out and boasts about the fact that he discarded it in the bin. We need more serious leadership than this. We need to take the crime situation more seriously because in 2022, I want to remind St. Lucians, 75 of us perished, and that's official figures, never mind those that were not counted. 75 St. Lucians perished as a result of violent crime. In 2023, it was repeated. Another 75 St. Lucians perished as a result of violent crime. In 2024, in less than 4 months, we have 30 St. Lucians who have perished as a result of violent crime. At that rate, we are well on our way to setting a new record. Are those the kind of records we want in St. Lucia? Where St. Lucians' lives just become statistics and a number of homicides just keep increasing every year? Is that what we want in this country? We have a government who has the responsibility for dealing with our national security and safety. That is one of the primary roles of any government. And we want our government to take that responsibility seriously because the cost is the ultimate loss of life. In addition to that, our economy is at risk. In addition to that, our freedom is being compromised. These are two fundamental for us to ignore and for our government to continue to be indifferent about. So I'm calling once again on behalf of the Opposition United Workers' Party, on the government of St. Lucia, to do what it takes to avert more killings in St. Lucia and to curb the crime situation. And note, ladies and gentlemen, when I speak of crime, I don't even mention rapes. I don't even mention robberies. I don't even mention grievous bodily harm. I don't mention white-collar crime. I don't mention all of these things that are, in fact, criminal acts. It's almost as if the rate of homicide in this country make these incidents pale to oblivion. And so we cannot continue with a country like this because if you read the news just last weekend, you heard of people being held at gunpoint on a beach while they're relaxing on the beach. You don't hear talk about these things. You don't hear talk about those things. And our government seem to be unconcerned, uninterested, and totally oblivious of their responsibility. And so when we look at the situation with government officials, instead of dealing with the crises that we have, economic crisis, the criminal crisis, the criminality crisis that we have in St. Lucia. You have a government minister who on a weekly basis goes on his show on television to vilify, intimidate, and abuse citizens of St. Lucia. And the Prime Minister will pretend that he does not know of this and does nothing about it. We have the uncouth, vile action of a government minister using his position, his office, and the privilege he has in terms of access to people's private records to come and to embarrass people on television by making public what is personal information. And the Prime Minister sees nothing wrong with that. And this very minister, Richard Frederick, went on television and made the comment that the leader of the United Workers' Party embraced a murderer and is asking his followers to follow a murderer in Shine Barrow, okay? And he was very emphatic about it until someone apparently corrected him, and he went back to say that admit that he was wrong. The gentleman was never convicted of murder. And even if he was, Richard Frederick should be the last person under the sun to make such comments about anyone. I want to ask Richard Frederick the question, and forgive me if, despite the fact that I had one, I'm not sure what an attaché is. But my understanding of an attaché is a person you handpick to be your right-hand man. An attaché, I almost feel like the word attaché suggests that the person is attached to you. Who is Richard Frederick's attaché? Dax Novell. Who is Dax Novell? A man who was charged for murder, convicted for manslaughter, an escaped prisoner, is Richard Frederick's attaché. Who is Richard Frederick to point fingers at anyone, accuse anyone, or attack anyone on the issue of crime? Richard Frederick talked about allegations and accusations about people. Richard Frederick should ask his cabinet colleagues what are the allegations and accusations that they have made about him in terms of criminality, as to whether he is a money launderer, whether he is a drug dealer, or whether he is a murderer himself. These are the things we want the government to take seriously and speak on. Do not come abusing people. Do not come pointing fingers at people. Do not come to try to intimidate anyone by virtue of your office, exposing people's private information. But you will not speak of the issues that are of concern and interest to St. Lucians, that is affecting our lives on a daily basis, that you are being paid to deal with. I will stop for now. And ladies and gentlemen, I will invite my colleague, Deputy Political Leader, Senator Dominic Fede, to speak on another subject, including the CIP.
Thank you, Spider. Good morning to members of the press and indeed those of you looking at us via Facebook. I want to recognize my colleague, the Deputy Political Leader of the United Workers' Party. The Labour Party would like you to believe that the Alan Chasney UWP-led political organization is somehow afraid of what they would do if they're able to raise millions from the CIP program. This was repeated by both the Prime Minister and the Minister for CIP. I want to say to them that there is no way that the United Workers' Party could be concerned about the level of infrastructure that you could develop. In fact, we want you to be successful. We hope that you can match the great work that we have done. I want to also remind them that as Prime Minister, the Alan Chasney-led cabinet implemented the most infrastructure projects in a single 5-year term by any Prime Minister in the last 30 years. Can I remind them that 35% of the island's road network was upgraded without any CIP funds? Under Alan Chasney, 500 million Eastern Caribbean dollars was mobilized in grant funding, in loans, in PPPs to do various road infrastructure development projects. This was done without a single dollar coming from the CIP program. In Grosley alone, there were 70 roads done in that constituency without a single dollar coming from the CIP project. In Choiseul, the much talked about Saltibus Road was constructed for millions of dollars without a single penny having to come from a CIP program. The cul-de-sac bridge was constructed, and that project has been completed a long time ago, waiting on the Millennium Highway project without a single dollar from the CIP project. St. Lucia's complete road network, the school infrastructure, an international airport, several community projects have been done without a CIP program. In the area of housing, the National Housing Corporation and Invest St. Lucia combined would have implemented over 500 house lots in St. Lucia across several housing developments island-wide without a single dollar coming from the CIP project. As Housing Minister, my colleague who's to my left, our Deputy Political Leader, Guy Joseph, went out and mobilized investments from the private sector. And here are the results. 60 lots were done under the CDP project with the Taiwanese funding in Forestry. Over 100 lots were done for St. Lucia nationals at Shock. We all know that the St. Lucia Labour Party administration stopped that project. In fact, we didn't need CIP to do the Shock housing project. The Talvon housing project in Babonneau was very much well underway under a PPP construct, public-private sector construct. No money is required from a CIP program to do so. In the area of Tua in Grosley, another housing project was conceived and well on its way, stopped again by the St. Lucia Labour Party administration without a single penny having to come from the CIP project. Over 100 lots by Invest St. Lucia were all sold out in Lafargue Choiseul. No money was required from the CIP project. So what I'm saying to the Prime Minister and his CIP minister, we don't buy that nonsense. If the government was serious about spending money on the CIP project, they would have done so a long time ago. Information that we have received from the various CIP reports that we have seen suggests that the government, since coming to office, has raised well over 100 million EC dollars. In this year alone, the Prime Minister reported that there was $65 million in revenue that came from the CIP program. And they have failed to spend $1 on the CIP program, from the CIP program rather, into the development of houses and community centers and projects that people need more in our communities. And so we don't buy this argument coming from the SLP that the reason that they're not signing the memorandum of agreement was because they are concerned about these projects. The government, in my view, is concerned about much other things than these infrastructure projects that they have touted. The St. Lucia Labour Party's implementation rate is something that we could not be afraid of in the opposition. Look at how they have made a mess of the Millennium Highway. We couldn't be afraid that any of the conceived projects that a CIP fund would raise to beef up infrastructure in this country could be finished before the last election, because your own record is poor. You could not even patch a pothole if we paid you to do it. Look at the mess of the road infrastructure in the country, and you believe that the United Workers' Party would be afraid of you and what you're able to do with the projects? No. What we are afraid of is this. We are afraid that you are making a bad decision that will injure the reputation of our passports and our country and our people internationally. That's what we are afraid of. You need to sign the agreement. We use this forum to call on you to do the right thing, to sign the memorandum of agreement with the other CARICOM countries, because it puts St. Lucia in a very bad light. Already, the European Commission has made a decision that their recommendation to the European Parliament is that the visa-free access that we now enjoy as CIP countries, that be changed significantly. This is where that conversation is about. Do not try to mislead the people of St. Lucia that you care about houses, that you care about community centers, that you care about roads. While we were building the roads of this country, you went out there for very myopic political benefit to say that the people of St. Lucia does not eat roads. And now all of a sudden, you are a champion of roads. We don't buy that from the St. Lucia Labour Party administration. If you wanted to spend money from the CIP into infrastructure, you have had 3 years to do it. You've had over $160 million, and you have not done it. And so we don't have the confidence that anything will happen with the infrastructure of the country from the CIP monies. The St. Lucia Labour Party administration must stop misleading the people of St. Lucia that they are not responsible for the reduction in the rates. I point you, the members of the media and the public, to a circular that has been published on the CIP. The circular went out in the 29th of December of 2022. And I want you to note the date. On the 29th of December, most St. Lucians would be busy in their Christmas. And so when you want to hide something in public relations, they tell you, do it on a Friday, publish it on a Sunday, or do it while people are in their merriment of Christmas. So on the 29th of December, 2022, the St. Lucia Labour Party administration announced the following. It said that the real estate option will be reduced from 300,000 to 200,000. That's a 33% decline in the price of what someone can apply through the CIP program under the real estate program. There's also a bond option that investors can invest in a bond. Under the Alan Shastney administration, the bond option stood at $500,000. In that circular of December 29, 2022, the St. Lucia Labour Party administration reduced the price that stood at $500K for the 5 years that the Alan Shastney government was there to $300,000. That represents a 40% decline, meaning that they reduce the sale of passports by 40% in this country. And now you want to tell people that the UWP is responsible? I looked in amazement at the press conference on Monday, and the journalist asked the Prime Minister, why didn't he change or correct the changes that Alan Shastney made to the program? You know what was his response? He said he couldn't do it because the other islands stood at 100,000 under the donation component, where it was declined from 200,000 to 100K. The government of the Alan Shastney government administration had to bring that in line with where the other governments are at. And that's exactly what Philip J. Pearce said on Monday, that he had no choice. He couldn't raise the price because the other islands were there. But the countries of the Caribbean are giving St. Lucia a great opportunity, a great chance to now leverage the most that it could ever from the CIP program. And that is by making sure that we're all at one price. When you are competing against each other, the only person who will benefit from that is the applicant. So if St. Lucia, Dominica, Grenada, St. Kitts and Dominica, all the other CIP countries are at the same price, it would mean that we all stand to benefit more. And so the government is missing a great opportunity They are short-sighted. They are spiting their nose to save their face. And so what is happening here is very, very, very troubling to us, and we remain very concerned that a privilege that St. Lucians can enjoy, have been enjoying for many decades, the visa-free access to many European countries. I mean, you're talking about people having to travel to Martinique for medical reasons. This happens constantly. The links that we have to family members who are residing in Martinique, people having to go through some of these European countries as connecting places when they're traveling to places like Taiwan to study. Now all of a sudden they will require a visa. Why are we making it so difficult for our citizens to enjoy a privilege we have had because of the good reputation that we've had as a country, laid out and set by our founders of this country? Now this government is going to destroy all of that because they want to, what, a few roads and community centers that we don't have any confidence in you to build? If you wanted to do that, you would have done that already. So the government must do the right thing, save the reputation of our passport, sign the agreement, stop playing games, and get serious about really showing the international community that we're serious about their security concerns, which they have expressed for a long time. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Fede. Members of the media, I will have Deputy Political Leader Guy Joseph make his presentation, and at the end of this, you'll have an opportunity to ask questions. And just for the benefit of our listeners, they indicate sometimes that they don't hear the questions, so we would appreciate if, either you come closer or I will repeat the questions when you ask them. And then, of course, we would appreciate, as always, if you identify yourself when asking the question. Deputy Political Leader Guy Joseph.
Thank you very much, Mr. Montoute. Good morning to the media and to our viewers and listeners in the diaspora. I am here today to address some very critical issues. But before I move on, UWP is known as a party for reliable and credible information. And when we give you information, it is information that is dependable. So I will make one slight correction. The Forestier Housing Project was not funded on the CDP, but it was funded on the National Housing, Ministry of Finance, and partly PPP arrangements. So I needed to make this correction so that tomorrow you don't hear Labour Party come in and say, oh, they said it was CDP money that they used to do so. So I thought that it was very important to clarify that point made by my colleague. It was all of the projects that he highlighted, we did not use any CIP funds or CDP funds for. So these were projects that we found innovative ways of implementing. Now to the core issue that I have to address. It is the issue of farmers in this country. We heard so much from then parliamentary representative for Vieux-Fort North and Dennery North about farmers. I thought that the Labour Party had two ministers of agriculture in opposition, in the persons of Sean Edward and Moses Jabatis. These two gentlemen, every time they spoke in the parliament, it was about agriculture. It was about bananas. And I could understand with Mr. Jabatis because having been the former Minister of Agriculture. And you would think that agriculture playing such a critical role in the economic viability of so many communities in St. Lucia that agriculture would be placed on the front burner by any government of a St. Lucia Labour Party. You would recall that I said when they appointed a forestry officer to be the Minister of Agriculture, I made the bold statement that all of St. Lucia would become a forest. Because you put a man that only knew how to preserve trees to be the Minister of Agriculture. And if you did not believe me, then let's examine the evidence that is before us today. What have we heard from the Minister of Agriculture? A year after yam rust would have destroyed the entire production of yams in St. Lucia, a statement came from the Ministry of Agriculture indicating that yam rust had destroyed the production of yams in St. Lucia. Are you aware today, members of the media, that some of the farmers, not even the plants, they have been able to save? What have we heard from the Ministry of Agriculture about how they are addressing the problem, what mitigation measures are being put in place to assist the farmers? One farmer told me, on average, he would make $15,000 a year in yams. This year, he lost even the plants. So he does not even have plans to replant. Now that is just on the yam side. We've not spoken about dashing, and we've not spoken about potatoes and all of the other things. A bag of fertilizer is out of the reach of the average farmer in St. Lucia because of the price. And when a donation was made of fertilizer for farmers in St. Lucia, a lot of that distribution took place from the parliamentary offices of parliamentary representatives. Since when the packing house or the warehouse or storage for farmers' input was placed at the offices of parliamentary representatives, and that is where you had to go and sign to receive a bag or 2 bags of fertilizer. Never before in the history of politics in this country did any politician get so involved in the distribution of inputs for banana farmers. Whether it was fertilizer from the Moroccans, whether it was the oil that was used to spray the bananas for leaf spot and black cickatoga, all of that was handled by the various banana companies in St. Lucia, and the distribution was done in a fair and equitable manner based on the number of acres of production and the amount of production. It had nothing to do whether you are a card-carrying member of a UWP government or a Labour Party government. All it had to do was your qualification for any level of support as a farmer was that you are practicing farming. I want you to recall, it was the Labour Party who stopped the incentives for FAR vehicles. That is how much the Labour Party had destroyed the farming industry. So while they were giving all their friends on the World Cup duty-free concessions to buy dozens of vehicles at a time, they had cut out the duty-free for farmers. Farmers could not buy a 4-door pickup as a farmer if they wanted to transport their family and the goods that they were producing under a Labour Party government. During that time, on the World Cup 2007, people had bought dozens of vehicles in the names of car rental companies and were using it for their own private, personal use. And the farmers were deprived. It took a UWP government coming back into office to reintroduce the duty-free for farmers, including whether you are buying a four-door pickup. And even then, you could not buy a little 2-ton truck duty-free as a farmer. And we said, but farmers should be able to use these vehicles to be able to fix the roads to their farms. So over the years, the record will show the political party that has been the most concerned and have worked to the most benefit of farmers in St. Lucia is the United Workers' Party government. Now let's come to the issues that we have. We've lost our ability to export bananas to the UK. And I want you to recall, while we had Honorable Alan Chastanet as Prime Minister seeking to get additional markets in Europe, including France, to export our bananas to, we preserved and kept our market alive in the UK. We came under heavy criticism by the St. Lucia Labour Party in opposition about not sending bananas to France. But we were exploring the market possibilities. You know what happened? The Labour Party came into office and we lost our market even in the UK, far less to get new markets. I am saying to us here, and to those of you following in the media, if losing our market in the UK was not bad enough, we have found ourselves in a situation where you cannot even find a box, a cardboard box, a cartoon, to be able to package any goods to export out of St. Lucia, whether it be mangoes, whether it be potatoes, whether it be bananas, dashing yams, whether it be plantain. I have been bombarded for the last month by farmers from every corner of St. Lucia, whether you go from Choiseul back to Ancillary Canneries, or you come from Viewfort North or Labrie, all the way back to Babono, including Castries Southeast. All the farmers are in a predicament because there are no boxes available. You know the amount of ripe plantain that is there, and there's nothing to package it in to transport it. You know the number of, and these products have a shelf life. You cannot say, I will leave the bananas there for the next month. You cannot leave it on the tree because it will begin to ripe and rot. You have no storage facility to put it in for it to be preserved. So you know what happens? 9 months of hard work by farmers in these difficult times. They are seeing all of their potential earnings rot by the side of the road because of the incompetence of a Ministry of Agriculture. And I remember when we came into office in 2006, a survey had been done prior to that, where the functioning of the Ministry of Agriculture was rated below 10%. And everybody who was interviewed and questioned, the results were, if the Ministry of Agriculture was shut down and there was not a Ministry of Agriculture in St. Lucia, nobody would be aware and nobody would miss it. That is under the Labour Party between 1997 and 2006. And when you think it could not get worse, it has gotten worse under Philip J. Pierre and Prosper as the Minister of Agriculture and Honorable Philip J. Pierre as Prime Minister. And let me tell you why it has gotten worse. If Winera, the producer of banana boxes or cartoon boxes in St. Lucia, is going to go into servicing their machines or their equipment, you mean there is no projection of how many boxes the country is likely to use? And then we heard some lame and lousy excuses that I refuse to accept, because when we say that Labour Party has no foresight, no forward planning, here is a prime example. If Winera is going to shut down for a period of time, cardboard boxes or cartoons do not have an expiration date or shelf life. It can last you a year. What would it take to produce a couple 100,000 boxes and store it there for the time period that you are servicing your machines? You are telling me you requested of farmers that they should pre-order boxes. We know when the farmers buy boxes, they have to pay for it. So even if you tell me pre-order, the expectation is if I pre-order, you will hold me responsible for buying. Where are the banana companies? When we had SLBGA in St. Lucia, we used to produce 120,000 tons of bananas a year, and we never ran out of boxes. Now with 5,000 tons of bananas and the same Winera company established in St. Lucia, we are running out of boxes. What would it take to produce 10,000 boxes and have it there for the period of time that the equipment is going to be down? And we know anybody, if you are repairing a house, you know that the likelihood that your projections may be off. You bring your vehicle to any garage for body work. When they tell you 2 weeks, you can expect 6 weeks. That is St. Lucia. So when Winera tell you we will have our machines up in 2 weeks, they should know that they would not have it up in 2 weeks. And now you're telling me because there's a shortage, you want to say it's because the farmers did not pre-order boxes? What is the role of the Ministry of Agriculture in this process? Their role ought to be forward planning and projection. Where are the extension officers, the field officers? You mean nobody has an idea of the level of production of bananas, the amount of acres of plantain we have in St. Lucia, how many people are exporting? You know, some of the exporters today, they are losing their markets because there is competition out there. So if I have to supply a container of plantain and bananas and yams and dashing, and I cannot supply it, and other people have been knocking on the doors of these companies to say, I can supply you from other countries, and you don't meet your quota, what do you think is going to happen? So the shortage of boxes must be seen beyond just a short-term impact on farmers, because some of our exporters, they are losing their international and regional markets to other places. How can other countries that don't produce boxes have boxes? And St. Lucia, that is the factory where the boxes are produced, we don't have. I believe that the Prime Minister should relieve the Ministry of Agriculture or the Minister of Agriculture of his responsibility, because you cannot be so incompetent that you cannot even average and estimate. And the government is finding $15 million to spend in jazz. They found $80 million to repair playing facilities for World Cup. You could not find $1 million to buy the boxes for the banana farmers and pay Winera for it, and so that they could produce it. And when the farmers come and collect the boxes, they'll pay for it and you'll get the refund. Is that rocket science? Do we need a consultant to come from overseas to tell this government how to handle a simple situation as not to create a shortage of boxes? Now, I'm not surprised at that. The Sugar Association of the Caribbean said there was no sugar shortage anywhere. There's no problem with the supply of sugar. Yet still the government of St. Lucia was creative enough to be able to create a shortage of something that there's no shortage anywhere else in the world for. And that was sugar. So if you find it surprising that they were able to create a shortage for boxes, I don't find it surprising. If there's one thing this government is good at, it's doing the wrong things. You can give them 100% pass mark for doing the wrong things. They are not capable of doing the right things. All they are capable of doing is the wrong things. And today, I am calling on the government to ask them, who is going to compensate the farmers for all the produce that they have worked so hard, spend their little savings, pay workers, care for the bananas? They had to buy fertilizer. They had to buy the gramaxone and the other things to spray. They had to pay workers. They had to buy the diaphin to protect the bananas. They had to get the ropes to tie it and keep it in place. We endured the hurricane season without the hurricane season doing any damage, major damage to the agricultural sector, only to find that the government is worse than any hurricane we had in St. Lucia, because at least if there was a hurricane and there were boxes, we could take the bananas that was down or those that were still standing and harvest it. But now we cannot harvest because of hurricane labor. The farmers cannot sell anything, and this country is being reduced into further poverty by the poor administration of this labor government. And so, as a United Workers' Party, we did everything to preserve and protect the market, to the point where the banana companies were unable to pay. The government stepped in and paid. When we were on the verge of losing the market in the UK, we met with a Jamaican company, and through Invest St. Lucia, we paid some of the monies that was owed by WIPDECO so that we would not lose our share of the market. It didn't take a year for Labour coming into office, and all of the good work of the United Workers' Party went to nothing because the Labour Party allowed the UK market to be lost to the farmers of St. Lucia. For this reason, the United Workers' Party is looking within the next couple of weeks to meet with all farmers in this country, and we will be announcing the times and the places where we would be calling farmers together, and we are going to come up with policy positions that the UWP is going to take when we get back into government to get the situation rectified and to make our farming viable in St. Lucia again. And we are going to meet with farmers both in the north and in the south of the island at 2 separate meetings, because it is important. And the Labour Party, they destroyed the farming sector when the mainstay of the economy was farming. And we see they are on the verge of destroying the tourism industry. And they will leave all of us as beggars in this country. As a United Workers' Party, we are not going to allow this to happen. We are going to put our best foot forward to support our farmers as we have done in the past, and to see to it that those who make their living by farming can live comfortably in this country. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Deputy Political Leader Guy Joseph. And before I open to the members on the floor here, I just want to quickly pose a question that was asked online to you, Senator Fede. I just, let me see. What was the question to you? Okay, there was a question to you about you mentioned implementation rate of the SLP. What exactly you meant by that? You can elaborate a little for the benefit of our listeners. And there's a question for you, Deputy Political Guy Joseph, so I will just ask a question right away so that subsequently you can just, when Senator Fede is done, you can ask your question as well. I think you dealt with that question. It was a question about the boxes. And there's also a question from Hot FM asking for your thoughts on the upgrade to the current stadium/hospital. Is the focus misdirected? That'll be a question for you. So, Senator Fede, you go first.
Yeah. Well, thanks for the question. What is meant by the implementation rate of the SLP being enormously slow is when we look at the amount of leftover projects. For example, the Rodney Bay Road, dismal. No solution, no end to the project. It's been 3 years. The Millennium Highway project has taken double the time that it is supposed to have taken. Commuters going down that thoroughfare has found it extremely inconvenient and difficult and painful to be driving in that area. You look at the road network all over the country. It is really a shame. This is the worst that our road network has been. You look at projects like St. Jude's, you look at the Urinora International Airport, you look at the West Coast Highway, where they have done a dismal job. They have failed the people in infrastructure. You know, it amazes me that when the Labour Party were in opposition, they said to us, put some chemical, bring some bleach, and open up St. Jude's. It was going to take a month. They have been there for 3 years and still cannot give us any hope that this project has an end in sight. So really and truly, the implementation, whether it is infrastructure, whether it is on various social programs, the St. Lucia Labour Party administration has been a dismal failure in implementing the various development projects that we need.
On the question directed to me in relation to whether they are misguided in their decisions or on the stadium and the hospital. When we look at the project implementation, as my colleague highlighted, I heard a statement from the person in charge of the Darren Sammy Cricket Ground indicating that the resources that they received was not sufficient to be able to do a complete job at the Darren Sammy Cricket Ground, so they did remedial work. Now I have to ask, how much of the $80 million went to the Darren Sammy Cricket Ground that it is only remedial work that is being done. Because I would think that $80 million could build a brand new world-class facility. We are hearing now, I think it's a Kirby Sydney, they told me that's the name of the person, ISL. Who's in charge of the cricket ground? Sports Incorporated.
Yeah.
Sports Incorporated, which is responsible, saying that the budget they had was not sufficient and they could only do remedial work. Now, the government went to Parliament to guarantee a loan for national lotteries on behalf of Sports Incorporated, and we are hearing that there was not enough money to fix the Darren Sammy Cricket Ground, so they did remedial work. You know what remedial work means? Remedial work means you have a window that needs changing, but one glass in the window is broken. So instead of changing the window, you do remedial work by removing the piece of broken glass and you just put the glass and you leave the same old window. It's like patching the roads, and Labour Party seem to be very famous in remedial works. Just a patch-up job, not a complete comprehensive job. Now going to the stadium. Up to a day like today, maybe the media can enlighten me because you all have more access to the Prime Minister than I do as the Minister of Finance. A year after you borrowed 205 million from the Saudi government for the stadium and St. Jude Hospital, have we been given a breakdown of how much of this is going to the stadium and how much is being spent on the hospital? And these are pertinent questions. So to the caller, to the person's question on this, it is obviously misdirected because we don't know. We are only left to speculate about whether, so is it 5 million that's going to be spent at the stadium and the 200 million at the hospital? Because in this year's budget, we saw the allocation for St. Jude Hospital at $265 million. Now, if you're going to repair a hospital for $265 million, the hospital we were building, the new St. Jude we were building, was not going to cost $265 million. And this further endorses how misguided and misdirected the decisions of this present government is.
Let me just correct you. The Prime Minister did put out a statement saying that $2.5 million have been allocated for the refurbishment of the George Orwell Stadium.
$2 million for consultancy.
For the preparatory work.
For preparatory works, yes. And he said the actual construction the funds for the actual construction will come from a drawdown on the Saudi.
So you're saying the
$2.5 million.
So let me tell you, this is not very difficult. If the consultancy is $2.5 million, consultancy is between 5 and 7% of the price. So a consultancy job, now you see, the Prime Minister must understand that when he speaks to St. Lucians, not all of us are Labour Party hacks and we don't understand figures as they do. So the 2.5 million that the Prime Minister said they are spending, that's to do the assessment. When the assessment is done, then you have to hire a consultant for the implementation. The consultant for the implementation is usually a 5 to 8%. Sometimes it may go as high as 10%, but on rare occasions it would go to 10%. So we are not anywhere close to being able to figure out how much is going to be spent at the stadium. Because now the consultant is to determine the scope of works to be done, the value of the works to be done. That is what you paying $2.5 million to somebody to tell you that all the steel beams there are rotten and you need to put them down. And that the seats have dry rotted over the years because of the elements and they need changing. You're going to pay $2.5 million for that, but you could not find $1 million to buy boxes and put it there for the banana farmers. But you can give a consultant $2.5 million to go and look at the stadium and tell you. So these are jobs for the boys. This is not about any repairs to the stadium yet, you know. So we need to be aware. And when the Prime Minister would make these foolish statements to people, we need to be able to challenge the Prime Minister and tell him, Mr. Prime Minister, the figures you're giving us there, they are making no sense. Why are you paying $2.5 million to assess the stadium? How did you know you needed a loan from the Saudis to fix the stadium if you did not assess that? So somebody just passed there and look at the stadium and say we need to repair the stadium, so let's go and take a loan of $200 million from the Saudis and we'll use some to fix the stadium. Is that how the government operates? I mean, that's how it appears to me. Because if it's now, almost a year after you borrowed the money and interest is being paid and all of that, that is when you determining, okay, let somebody go and see what we really need to have to do down there. This is crazy. I mean, I cannot understand a government running like this, but at the end of the day, that kind of Prime Minister you have is the kind of government that you have. Thank you. Any other questions?
Yeah, sure. Let's go agriculture.
Mm-hmm.
Over the years, even with your administration, there have been difficulties with agriculture that the government cannot control. For example, a tropical storm or fertilizers. So, and agriculture really is resource intensive. You need to put a lot of investment into it so you can get the crops out. What do you think the government should do long term to ensure that they are on the ball as it relates to agriculture? Because every year we have farmers coming with the same complaints. It's either a storm or fertilizer. So what do you think the government can do to ensure that they are on the ball, so that when, not if, but when the challenges come, they already have what's there in place?
So I will tell you, basically, storms is something we have no control over. Climate change, hurricanes, floods, but agriculture recovers quickly enough after any storm. And we've had several storms. We had Debbie, we had Thomas, we had the Christmas Eve trough. None of these have been as devastating to agriculture as labor has been in 3 years, less than 3 years. So we need to be real about what we are seeing. We've had leaf spot. We had you remember the red mealybug we had? We had black cickatoga. All of this, the banana industry has survived all of these challenges, every hurricane, and we've been able to continue to export bananas to the UK. In 1 year of Labour being in office, we lost the banana market in the UK. We've not even on the regional level now, we can export bananas. So you can make comparisons between governments. That's a fair assessment from the media, but we will not both fall in the same bracket. Because over the years, UWP has been a government that have supported farmers through thick and thin. When we got fertilizer from the Moroccans, we did not distribute it from our constituency offices for supporters of the United Workers' Party. It was distributed from the inland buying depots in Dennery and in Cul-de-sac, in Odsa. It was sent to the various farmers' organizations, or you went through your extension officer. You did not have to go through a parliamentary rep to get a bag of fertilizer. Here's what the UWP established. While everybody pays tax on anything above a certain amount, $75,000 of farmers' earnings is tax-free. All the inputs for farming was given. We kept it at a base that was low enough. And that is what we told the government. When you saw the prices escalating after COVID, our advice to the government was keep the base price so that the shipping would not cause the prices to go up. But the government came and they boasted that they collected an extra 75 million in extra revenue. Revenue they didn't budget for. Yet still we did not see one area of reprieve or relief for the farmers. I worked with farmers. One of the persons shipping out of St. Lucia to the UK, when we were in government, we helped her with a packaging house and everything. And we established the farmers market at the inland buying depot with the Taiwanese where the packaging was being done. And let me tell you further what a UWP government was doing. We identified the 7-crop program where we were going to become self-sufficient in producing these 7 crops. And the hotels and the supermarkets were going to buy these at a premium price. And the ones we could not produce, we would allow them to import at a lower duty price. So in other words, they would cross-subsidize our local production. So if we were producing cucumber, they would pay more for it than if they were ordering it. They would pay more on the local market. But if we cannot produce cabbage, you would allow them to bring in the cabbage, and whatever they use to cross-subsidize our local cucumbers would be offset against what they did with the cabbage. So we had the 7-crop program. That was well established, well on its way. What has happened? And have you heard what has happened in the poultry industry? That they have now given certain entities in St. Lucia the license to import without buying our local chicken. That is going to bring the total demise of the poultry industry. And if the poultry industry is affected, then it means that our egg producers would be affected also. And we had been self-sufficient in egg production for an extended period of time. So what I'm saying to you there is you cannot make a fair comparison to say both governments have done this or have done that. There's a clear distinction between where we stand on agriculture and what we have done for agriculture as opposed to what Labour Party has done in the agricultural sector. The Bosseju farms closed on the Labour Party. As a school child, I went there to see the various animals. They were producing eggnog and all of these things. Between 1997 and 2006, the cows disappeared. All the sheep they had down there, the goats. It took the UWP coming back into office to try and revive the Bosseju farm. And what we were doing is in Volet, in Mikud, we were moving the Bosseju farm there to a much bigger place. And you had the different bloodlines of breeds of different animals that was being developed in order to feed the abattoir in Vieux-Fort with sufficient animals. So we had a clear plan for agriculture and where we were going. It is evident that the Labour Party does not have agriculture anywhere on their radar or to do anything to improve the agricultural sector.
Sorry, you spoke about the abattoir. That same abattoir, with the wallet, what's the name of it?
Agricultural.
Yeah. The animals that would have been, I guess, bred there, would it meant to be slaughtered at the abattoir that was in Newport?
No, it was to make it available to the various persons in the farming industry to be able to go there and buy and breed the various animals because the government must take the lead. A farmer on their own cannot go and get a special bloodline of animals to grow in St. Lucia and to care for. So the Ministry of Agriculture was taking the lead in breeding the various animals and being able to sell to the farmers, who in turn would get these animals to breed and then to be able to have sufficient local animals to be slaughtered at the abattoir.
But I understand that. Wasn't this abattoir decommissioned under the UWP administration?
Yes, because
Project, right? The DSH project.
it was not decommissioned, it was never commissioned. So the building was there but had never been used. And then the DSH project was paying for the new facility that was being established at Volet so that the building could be used, but all the equipment and everything that was there could be moved to the new facility. When the Labour Party came in, we heard that they were going to build 2 new abattoirs. Isn't that what we heard? They were looking at one in the Macbex area and one somewhere. Have we seen any of them materialize? No.
But I want to piggyback back on my colleague's question. St. Lucia has this common goal that is in Caricon territory to reduce the food import bill, right, by 25% by 2025. The last time I did question the minister on that and how close we are to achieving this goal, and said it's nowhere close. Again, he did ask about us and what's our plan for food security. And I don't think any administration, maybe some administrations may have done more than others in terms of pushing agriculture ahead, but I think every administration has their faults. I can see that.
And I would totally agree with you that we are not perfect in this, but we've done more than them.
No problem. That's your assessment, right? But this is very serious.
Oh,
Without
yeah.
food, none of our sectors will survive. Not one. We need the food. Okay? And we are at a point in time where we all hear about the climate change and the issues that we are seeing. What is the plan as a nation that we should be having at this point in time to take us to a point of self-sufficiency, at least with certain crops, to ensure that our people, if for any reason we won't face another pandemic where we cannot import food, that we are not left basically in a famine?
So to answer you very directly, our 7-crop program was designed specifically to make us self-sufficient in these 7 crops that we are talking about. And these were easy to grow crops, short term. We never expected we would get to a point in St. Lucia when bananas would be more expensive in St. Lucia than it is in the US, or plantain would be more expensive in St. Lucia than it is in the US. And it is amazing that in such a short period of time, that our agriculture has gone down so considerably. So yes, I agree with you that there have been shortcomings on all sides when it comes to agriculture. But we know that talking about 25% reduction of the food import bill is nice on paper. Had we continued with the 7-crop program, we would have achieved the 25%. Because it means that these are highly used imported products. The other thing is our school feeding program. And if you look at what we did with our school feeding program, was to piggyback on the agricultural sector. And I was making a point earlier that maybe I need to highlight. Today we are hearing that the government wants to go into an arrangement with Renault to become the sole buyer of agricultural products, as we are hearing happening in other countries. Now, I have no problems with Renault as a businessman, and if he is controlling all the roads and the infrastructure, and now he wants to control agriculture and determine who is buying what. Here's the difference in planning. The United Workers' Party proposed the establishment of a company that would include the hotels, the Ministry of Agriculture, and the various farmers' organizations. And that is the first step we had done, was establishing the marketing board down in Odsa. All the crops produced, or all the produce, would be brought to that area. We were going to package them, grade A, B, and C. Your grade A would get your premium price. Your grade B would get a reasonable price, and then your grade C would be what is at the lower level that you can get at a cheaper price. All of these products would be properly packaged and sold to supermarkets, hotels, what you go into export and everything. And it would have the involvement of all parties concerned. And the benefits from that, the profits made, would go right back to the shareholders of this company. Today we are hearing the Labour Party moving in a completely opposite direction and wanting to give it to just one individual. How does that one individual benefit the average farmer? So when you bring in your dashing and they tell you, boy, I can only pay you 40 cents a pound for that dashing, but it really costs you 60 cents to produce it a pound, you already 20 cents in the negative, in the red. So that cannot just work. That is why we had the Ministry of Agriculture directly involved and the farmers themselves, so there would be a collaboration. And we have to go back to the plan of the United Workers' Party for agriculture and to show how agriculture can be viable. And our food security that we spoke about, there will always be challenges with food security. Rice is one of the most staple foods in any dish or any diet in St. Lucia. Are we going back to producing rice? Are we going to go back and plant? How are we going to use our bananas? Do you know there's a gentleman using our coconuts now to produce coconut flour? So there are lots of byproducts. And when we started, and we are not just talkers, we are doers. If you go to Foasso, you would see the facility that was established there and the one in Angers-Derisso to add value. They were processing facilities that was converting a lot of our local products to give it a longer shelf life and added value. What has happened to these facilities since Labour came into office? We are hearing nothing about them anymore. So I can tell you, even our plan of 5 years ago is more relevant and better than any plan that Labour has put forward today for the agricultural sector. I'll make way for my colleague Dominic. You wanted to?
No, go ahead. I think you touched on me.
Okay. Mr.
Thank you very much, Mr. Guy Joseph. And do you have any other questions on any other areas?
I
that-
actually wanted to speak about the current Home Affairs Minister, she had said that she will be relieved of her over 76 and it would have been put under national security. And seem to insinuate we might have a new minister for national security. We're not sure. But I wanted to also come. I know you have been calling for for national security to be a standalone department to focus on the crime issue. What are your thoughts on that?
And it is not just the department, but it is who is heading the department. We have to be honest about it. The current Prime Minister, who is now the Minister of National Security, has been an abject failure, has been a disaster. He has not led that ministry in a manner that any positive changes have taken place, that we have seen any positive action to control the crime situation. So hence the reason why, not just me, but many have called for his resignation and that he replaced himself as Minister of National Security. But it's not just a replacement. We want him to bring in someone who will make a difference. Because we have heard of the establishment of a new ministry and the appointment of a new minister, yet crime continues unabated. What we want is not necessarily new ministries or new ministers. What we want is the curbing of crime, criminal activity in this country. And so that requires a plan. That is the first step. The government does not have a plan for crime. When suggestions are made, they should consider it. If, as the Prime Minister has indicated, he does not have a plan, he should be open to receiving recommendations. And as we have suggested, a crime symposium should be called, so those who probably have suggestions, have ideas, can let those ideas contend. And for us as a country, with all parties who have interests in the security of this country, for us to come together and to ensure that we come up with a strategy to combat the crime that is taking place in this country. It appears at this time that the criminals are more organized than the government.
My question is this. The United Workers' Party has twice now sent in recommendations for programs to be put in place to manage the crime situation. In May, there is supposed to be the 68th annual CAF Health Research Conference in St. Lucia. And the focus of that conference is violence as a public health crisis. Are we going to see the United Workers' Party taking part in this conference because
I cannot say that I know that we have been invited, but if we are invited, we'll definitely take part. If we're not invited, we'll ask for an invitation. Because that's how eager we are to participate in any such action to fight crime in this country. We stand ready and willing, and we're not just saying so, we mean it. And so I am hoping that will, because the opposition itself has been planning, that I know that they've been planning to hold a crime symposium where all parties will be invited so that we can come up with a plan to deal with crime in this country. And there are ministers of government pointing fingers at people, accusing them of being criminals rather than deal with the problem of the country, which is the crime situation that we have. And you would have heard Richard Frederick in his last program point fingers at many people, including myself. But I just want to say now, I've spoken on the issue before, and I just want to take this opportunity to quickly say again, I defy Richard Frederick from coming out publicly or anywhere to state that I am involved in any criminal activity and to say that I was involved in any action such as kidnapping. Okay? I am not a criminal. I am not involved in criminal activity. Okay? Richard Frederick himself should start. He said there's such a torchlight or whatever that shines on whoever. But when this torchlight shined, what I saw was Richard Frederick himself as a violent person who has used a firearm, a gun, to fire bullets at his neighbors, okay, in the process damaging the water tank. An action that he was fined in a court for having taken. Richard Frederick is known. He accused me of using foul language. Yes, I was at a bar, and I was accosted by a gentleman and I used some expletives, yes, which I apologize for having used the expletives, but not apologize for my reaction. Richard Frederick has been seen assaulting a police officer, kicking his car, and so on. Richard Frederick has used expletives in no other place. I did in a bar. He has done it in the Parliament of St. Lucia. Yet still, the Prime Minister of St. Lucia sees nothing wrong with his behavior, sees nothing wrong with his action, despite all his abuse of women in St. Lucia, despite the using of his office and the privilege he has as a minister to access information, and you use it to embarrass people and to expose people. The Prime Minister sees nothing wrong with that. I'm saying that these things we have to be mindful of, because if at the top you have that kind of behavior, what do you expect to trickle down to the lower levels of the lower echelons of society? And then these are the things we have to take seriously. I notice St. Lucians are very passive as far as those things are concerned, but these are acceptable behaviors from a minister of government, and we as a country should not accept it.
I just have one final question. I have one final question to you, Mr. Pady. You said that the European Parliament is now considering changes to the Schengen visa regime. Do you have any indication of what those changes are?
So as it relates to the question pertaining to whether we have any information what the changes are, we don't. It is for the Prime Minister, who has just come back from Brussels, to tell us what is the recommendation made by the European Commission. So the technical people at the European Union, which is the European Commission, made recommendations for the Parliament to vote on. And those recommendations are about changes to the visa regime to the Schengen region. The Prime Minister must clarify what those recommendations are, because he was in the meeting and they would have briefed him on what those changes are going to be. I suspect that if it was anything positive, the Prime Minister would have shared it with us. But in the press conference, he did everything else in trying to blow smoke, trying to play politics, in suggesting that the Alan Chasney-led UWP is afraid of them implementing projects. We are against St. Lucia. Those are not the issues. The issue is our visa-free access is at risk, something we've enjoyed. The country's reputation through its passports is at risk. And so therefore the government must act in a responsible way. If you ask me, they're being extremely reckless on this matter by saying that they have contractual obligations. Contractual obligations, why would you sign a contract that would place the people of St. Lucia in such a difficult situation? That's our point.
They were the ones who said they're writing to investors not to come and invest in St. Lucia. That's not wrong.
Okay, let me, before we end, let me just indicate there's one more question that was asked of me, and that is someone asked me to comment on the Minister of Sports. When asked about the George Odlum Stadium, he said that is a question for the Minister of Finance, and he did not know the answer to it. Of course, that is typical of the present government, unwilling to be accountable, unwilling to provide information. I mean, no one believes that the Minister of Sports does not know what a sports project would cost, and does not know what the allocation for a sports project is. But that's the style of the current government, unwilling to make disclosures, unwilling to account, and so, that's what we find. But before we end, I just want to say that St. Lucians have to be very mindful of what is happening in this country. With all the killings that are taking place, I am becoming worried that we are seeing this as being so commonplace that it has become normal. And honestly, I'm haunted by the words of this resident, and I will call his name Mr. Simon, of Beaufort, who made the comment that crime has become normalized. I am beginning to see that killings in this country is a normal occurrence that we are not even jolted by, that we don't comment about, and that unfortunately our government is indifferent about. St. Lucians, we have to take a stand to ensure that this does not remain as a normal occurrence. When our lives are lost, when people are killed in this country in the violent manner that we are seeing, it cannot be commonplace, it cannot be normal. This is not the society that we deserve as a people. In the ancient times, perhaps you had this kind of barbaric activities taking place as normal. We cannot have this as normal in a civilized society. So I'm calling on the government once again. Okay, stop procrastinating. Stop showing indifference. Stop failing our nation and take decisive action and do something about the crime situation. I thank all members of the media who were here today. I thank all of you who have been listening to us in St. Lucia and in the diaspora. And we ask that you stay tuned, as next week we will be with you once again to deal with the matters of interest and concern to St. Lucians. I thank you.